Blue-scaled alien coach Solaris sneered as he cracked a neural whip inches from the human athlete's face. "You primates are too fragile to even survive one of my training sessions." The reptilian towered over the muscular 6'2" man. It was 2185. James Thompson and Earth's first human Olympic delegation had just arrived at the immense Intergalactic Games space station. The 27-year-old decathlete's excitement at representing humanity turned to shock as their assigned Draconis coach berated them. "Soft-skinned weaklings. You mammals will be lucky to make it through training in one piece, much less win medals against superior galactic species." Solaris's yellow eyes gleamed with contempt. Anger and determination surged through James. He met the alien's glare. "We'll see about that. Humans are tougher than you think." James knew he had to prove Solaris wrong. Earth was counting on him. Humanity's reputation and their acceptance in the galactic community all hinged on this historic Olympic debut. Failure was not an option. James vowed to push himself beyond any human limits. He had to, for all mankind. But as training began, the crushing gravity, bizarre sports, and hilariously deadly alien gym equipment showed James what he was up against. Solaris's constant insults didn't help. Time to dig deep and show what humans were made of, or die trying in front of the whole damn universe. James scowled as he trudged back to his quarters after another grueling training session with Solaris. The Draconis coach's incessant mockery and lack of constructive feedback had pushed him to his limits. He slumped onto his bed, his muscles aching from the punishing gravity and the unfamiliar exercises. "There has to be a way to get through to him," James muttered, rubbing his temples. He sat up, a determined glint in his eye. "If I can understand more about the Draconis culture, maybe I can find a way to earn his respect." James spent the next few hours poring over the Galactic Federation's database, studying everything he could find on Draconis physiology, history, and social structure. One particular passage caught his attention. "The Draconis society is built upon a rigid hierarchy, with an individual's position determined by their strength, both physical and mental. Respect is earned through displays of dominance and unwavering resolve in the face of adversity." A plan began to form in James's mind. He knew it was risky, but if it worked, it could be the key to unlocking Solaris's respect and cooperation. The next day, as the team gathered for their morning training session, James stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "Coach Solaris," he called out, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I challenge you to a one-on-one sparring match, right here, right now." The other athletes gasped, and Solaris turned to face James, his yellow eyes narrowing. "You must be joking, primate. You wouldn't last a minute against me." James stood his ground. "Try me, unless you're afraid of being beaten by a soft-skinned weakling." Solaris let out a bark of laughter. "Very well, human. I accept your challenge. Prepare to be humiliated in front of your team." The two squared off in the center of the training room, the other athletes forming a loose circle around them. James could feel his heart racing as he sized up his opponent. Solaris was at least a foot taller than him and heavily muscled, his scales glinting under the harsh lights. The Draconis coach lunged forward, his fist aimed at James's head. James ducked, feeling the rush of air as Solaris's punch missed by inches. He darted to the side, using his smaller size and agility to evade the alien's powerful strikes. Solaris growled in frustration, his attacks becoming more aggressive. James saw an opening and landed a solid kick to the Draconis' midsection, causing him to stumble back a step. The human pressed his advantage, raining down a series of quick jabs and crosses. But Solaris was far from beaten. He roared, his tail lashing out and catching James in the chest, sending him flying across the room. James hit the ground hard, the wind knocked out of him. He struggled to his feet, his vision blurring. The two combatants circled each other, both breathing heavily. James could feel his muscles screaming in protest, but he refused to back down. He launched himself at Solaris, grappling with the larger alien. They traded blows, neither giving an inch. James could taste blood in his mouth, but he kept fighting, driven by a determination to prove himself. The match seemed to go on for an eternity, the only sounds being the impact of fists on flesh and the grunts of exertion. Finally, after what felt like hours, Solaris held up a hand, signaling the end of the match. Both he and James were bruised and battered, their chests heaving as they fought to catch their breath. "I must admit, human," Solaris said, his voice grudgingly respectful, "you have surprised me. I did not expect you to last as long as you did." The other alien athletes murmured their agreement, their eyes shining with a newfound admiration for James and the human team. James felt a surge of pride, knowing that he had taken the first step in earning their respect. From that moment on, Solaris began to take a more active role in coaching the human athletes, although his methods remained as harsh and uncompromising as ever. James, recognizing the importance of adapting to the alien sports and equipment, convinced Solaris to allow the human team to train alongside the other alien athletes. As the weeks passed, the human athletes began to improve, their skills sharpening under the combined guidance of Solaris and their alien peers. They even started to excel in some of the events, much to the surprise and consternation of their rivals. But as the human team's success grew, so did the tensions with the other alien competitors, particularly the Zorgons. Known for their ruthless competitiveness and underhanded tactics, the Zorgons seemed determined to undermine the humans at every turn. James stepped into the gravity hammer throw arena, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nerves. The stands were packed with spectators from across the galaxy, their alien faces displaying a range of emotions as they watched the competitors prepare for the event. As James approached the throwing circle, he caught sight of Thrax, the Zorgon champion. The hulking alien sneered at James, his eyes glinting with malice. "Ready to be humiliated, primate?" Thrax hissed, his voice dripping with contempt. James ignored the taunt, focusing instead on the hammer in his hands. It was heavier than anything he had trained with on Earth, the dense metal alloy designed to withstand the immense gravitational forces of the event. The other competitors took their turns, their throws impressive but falling short of Thrax's standing record. As James stepped up to the circle for his final throw, he could feel the weight of the galaxy's expectations on his shoulders. Thrax sidled up to him, his hot breath tickling James's ear. "You're nothing, human, a weak, pathetic creature who doesn't belong here. You'll fail, and your entire species will be a laughing stock." James clenched his jaw, anger coursing through his veins. He channeled that fury into his grip on the hammer, his knuckles turning white with the force of his determination. He thought of his teammates, of Solaris, and of all the humans back on Earth who were counting on him. With a roar of effort, James spun the hammer around his body, building up momentum. He could feel the artificial gravity tugging at the hammer, trying to pull it down, but he fought against it with every fiber of his being. At the perfect moment, he released the hammer, sending it hurtling through the air. Time seemed to slow down as the hammer soared across the arena, the crowd falling silent in anticipation. It struck the ground with a resounding boom, sending up a cloud of dust and debris. The judges scrambled to take measurements, their voices rising in excitement as they confirmed the distance. "James Thompson of Earth has thrown the hammer a distance of 437.8 meters, the announcer declared, his voice booming through the stadium. A new intergalactic record, shattering the previous mark held by Thrax of Zorgon. The crowd erupted in cheers, the sound deafening. James's teammates rushed to congratulate him, their faces beaming with pride. Even Solaris, normally so stoic, allowed a hint of a smile to cross his scaly face. But the celebration was short-lived. Thrax, his face contorted with rage, stormed over to the judges' table. "This is impossible," he roared, slamming his fist down on the table. "The human must have cheated. I demand an investigation." The judges, taken aback by Thrax's outburst, conferred among themselves. After a tense few moments, one of them stood up and addressed the crowd. "We have received a formal complaint from the Zorgon delegation accusing James Thompson of using performance-enhancing substances. An investigation will be conducted immediately. James was stunned, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. "That's a lie," he shouted, his voice shaking with anger. "I have never used any banned substances. I compete clean, always have, always will." Thrax smirked, his eyes glinting with triumph. "We'll see about that, human. When the truth comes out, you'll be stripped of your medal, and your reputation will be ruined." As the stadium descended into chaos, with reporters clamoring for statements and the crowd murmuring in confusion, James felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Solaris, his expression grim. "We'll fight this, James," the Draconis coach growled, his voice low and determined. "I know you compete with honor. The Zorgons are trying to undermine you, to break your spirit, but we won't let them win." James nodded, his resolve hardening. He knew he was in for the fight of his life, both on and off the field. But with his coach and his teammates by his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. James paced back and forth in the small waiting room, his mind racing with the possible outcomes of the doping investigation. He knew he was innocent, but the thought of being falsely accused and stripped of his achievements gnawed at his insides. The door opened, and Solaris entered, his expression unreadable. "The committee has reached a decision," the Draconis coach said, his voice low and serious. "But before they announce it, there's something you need to see." Solaris led James to a private viewing room, where a large screen displayed security footage from the training facilities. James watched in disbelief as Thrax and his Zorgon teammates were caught red-handed, tampering with the equipment of other competitors, including James's own hammer. "I can't believe it," James muttered, his hands clenching into fists. "They've been cheating this whole time." Solaris nodded, his eyes narrowing. "The committee has indisputable evidence. They're moving to disqualify the entire Zorgon team from the competition." James felt a surge of relief, knowing that his name would be cleared. But as he watched the footage again, a thought occurred to him. He turned to Solaris, his brow furrowed. "Coach, I know the Zorgons have done wrong, but is it fair to punish their entire team for the actions of a few?" Solaris tilted his head, surprised by James's question. "What do you mean, James?" James took a deep breath, organizing his thoughts. "The Olympics are about sportsmanship and fair play. If we disqualify the Zorgons, aren't we going against those very principles?" Solaris remained silent, considering James's words. After a moment he spoke. "What do you propose, then?" "Let them continue competing, but under close supervision. If they break the rules again, then they face strict penalties. But give them a chance to redeem themselves, to prove that they can compete with honor." Solaris chuckled, shaking his head. "You humans and your compassion. It's a strange thing, but perhaps there's wisdom in it." Together, James and Solaris presented the proposal to the Intergalactic Olympic Committee. The committee members were initially skeptical, but James's impassioned plea and the support of his teammates swayed their decision. The Zorgons were allowed to continue competing under the watchful eye of the authorities. News of James's compassion and leadership spread quickly throughout the Olympic village. Athletes from various species approached him, expressing their admiration for his sportsmanship and integrity. James, humble as ever, simply smiled and thanked them, focusing on his own events. As the Olympics progressed, James and his human teammates continued to excel. James set new intergalactic records in the decathlon, his performances drawing massive crowds and media attention. His fellow humans secured medals in a range of sports, from the gravity-defying gymnastics to the high-speed hovercraft races. The success of the human team became the talk of the galaxy, with James at the center of it all. Intergalactic news networks clamored for interviews, and young athletes from countless worlds looked up to him as a role model. Through it all, Solaris remained a constant presence at James's side, offering guidance and support. The once harsh Draconis coach had grown to respect and admire his human pupil, recognizing the strength not just in his physical abilities, but in his character. In the training facilities, Solaris began to incorporate human techniques and philosophies into his coaching style. He encouraged his athletes to focus not just on winning, but on the joy of competition and the value of sportsmanship. The change was gradual but noticeable, and it sparked a ripple effect throughout the intergalactic athletic community. As James stepped up to the podium to receive yet another gold medal, he caught Solaris's eye in the crowd. The Draconis coach nodded, a hint of a smile on his scaly face. James grinned back, knowing that his journey was far from over. With the support of his coach, his teammates, and the entire human race, he was ready to take on whatever challenges the galaxy had in store. James stood at the edge of the gravitational pole vault runway, his heart pounding in his chest. The decathlon gold medal was within reach, but he knew the competition would be fierce. He glanced at the scoreboard, noting Thrax's impressive performance. The Zorgon had been a formidable rival throughout the games, pushing James to his limits. As James prepared to take his position, he felt a scaly hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Solaris, his coach and mentor, with a somber expression on his face. "James, there's something I need to tell you," Solaris said, his voice low and strained. James furrowed his brow. "What is it, coach?" Solaris took a deep breath. "I've been diagnosed with a terminal illness, a rare genetic disorder that affects my species' regenerative abilities." James felt like he had been punched in the gut. "What, but how long have you known?" "I've kept it a secret from the team. I didn't want it to be a distraction." Solaris looked James in the eye. "But coaching you and the other human athletes has given me a renewed sense of purpose in my final days. I'm proud of you, James." Tears welled up in James's eyes. He embraced his coach, the tough, scaly exterior, giving way to the warmth of their friendship. "I'll win this gold medal for you, Solaris. I promise." Solaris nodded, a hint of his old toothy grin on his face. "I know you will, kid. Now go out there and show them what humans are made of." James stepped up to the starting line, the weight of the moment bearing down on him. He could feel the eyes of the entire galaxy on him, the hopes and dreams of his species resting on his shoulders. He began his run, the artificial gravity pulling at his body as he raced down the runway. He planted his pole and vaulted into the air, the bar looming above him. James cleared the height, securing his position at the top of the leaderboard. But as he began his descent, a sudden gust of wind threw him off balance. The stadium's environmental control system had malfunctioned, sending a blast of air across the landing pad. James crashed into the pad, a searing pain shooting through his leg. He grimaced, trying to stand, but his leg buckled beneath him. The crowd gasped, a hush falling over the stadium. James lay on the pad, his face contorted in agony. But he knew he couldn't give up. Not now. Not when he was so close. With gritted teeth, James dragged himself to his feet. He could hear Solaris's voice in his head urging him on. "You've got this, James. One more jump, one more chance to make history." James limped back to the starting position, his injured leg trailing behind him. He could feel the eyes of his teammates, his rivals, and the entire galaxy upon him. He took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of strength and determination he had left. Then, with a primal roar, he launched himself down the runway. Pain exploded through his body with every step, but James pushed through it. He planted his pole and vaulted over the bar, his injured leg hanging limply behind him. As he landed on the pad, the stadium erupted in a deafening roar. Athletes and spectators from every species leapt to their feet, their applause and cheers shaking the very foundations of the arena. James lay on the pad, his chest heaving, his body spent. But as the realization of his victory washed over him, a grin spread across his face. He had done it. He had won the decathlon gold medal. The medal ceremony was a blur of flashing cameras and congratulatory handshakes. James stood atop the podium, the gold medal heavy around his neck. He scanned the crowd, searching for Solaris, eager to share this moment with his coach. But as the ceremony concluded, James couldn't find Solaris anywhere. A sinking feeling settled in his stomach as he made his way back to the human team's quarters. It was there that he received the news. Solaris had collapsed during James's final event, his illness finally taking its toll. He had been rushed to the infirmary, but it was too late. The Draconis coach had passed away shortly after witnessing James's victory. James sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down his face. His teammates gathered around him, offering their condolences and support. They had all grown to respect and admire Solaris, the unlikeliest of allies who had become a symbol of the power of friendship and unity. In the days that followed, the human team dedicated their performances to Solaris's memory. They competed with a newfound sense of purpose, knowing that their coach's legacy lived on through them. As the Intergalactic Olympics came to a close, James knew that his life had been forever changed. The experiences he had shared with Solaris and his teammates had shaped him in ways he never could have imagined. He returned to Earth as a hero, but more importantly as an ambassador for his species. James knew that he had a responsibility to promote understanding and cooperation among the diverse species of the galaxy. And as he looked to the stars, he knew that Solaris was watching over him, proud of the man he had become. James vowed to carry on his coach's legacy, to fight for unity and compassion in a galaxy that so often seemed divided. For in the end, it was not the medals or the records that mattered most, but the bonds of friendship and the power of the human spirit to overcome even the greatest of obstacles. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.